Let's talk about COVID-19 and what it has done to our economy, and then what was happening even before COVID-19 struck. Specifically, let's speak about the real estate sector. This is in the land sector and also in the properties that are then developed on pieces of land. The land sector in this country has enjoyed some serious boom over the last, let's say, 17 years or so, where land prices have been on the up and up. Many companies have come up, buying and selling pieces of land. Some people are even arguing that now Kenya has basically become an eighth. So it's been very into it. You will find an eighth of land being sold somewhere in Lamu. You go to Turkana, you'll find a piece of land. Yeah.
An eighth.
50 by 100, others even 30
A
by 100.
tenth.
Even a
A
tenth.
16th.
You will
Jeez
find
Louise.
Yes.
being sold somewhere. And then we got to a point where people started saying, you see now, this one's put up houses and no one is buying. Or this one's put up houses and the purchase is now slow. Certain words started coming in to the conversation in the country, that there's a real estate bubble bust in the country. There's a property bubble bust in the country. And there are those that are saying, if you look at what is happening now, go around Nairobi and look at the number of properties that are there and they're empty, not occupied. They still have, so many months after they were constructed, you're not finding tenants moving into them. This is a clear indication that there is a real estate property bubble bust.
For there to be a bust, there should be a boom, shouldn't there be?
Yep.
Okay. So I would actually begin by questioning the boom. Did the boom exist?
Was there an actual boom?
Was there an actual boom? Because if we can determine that there was a boom, then the story of the
How would you
What would
determine
characterize a boom? People are buying property, buying land, building. Suddenly people have the financial muscle to be able to do this, get into the business, whether it would be for commercial purposes or to put up a personal home. How would you characterize a boom?
An unusual increase in activity in that particular sector. And you've
There's
described
rising
it well.
demand, rising supply.
Yes.
And they are matching.
And they're matching.
You get to a bust where that supply then is so much and there's
no demand.
Sharp drop in demand. Sharp drop in demand then causes a sharp drop in prices. Sharp drop in prices and therefore means that you have a piece of land that or a house, and that house you maybe bought it for 4 million shillings and you cannot even sell it for $1 million if you wanted to sell it.
And it also means usually that you have a little discussion you have to have with your financiers.
Yep.
And it's usually not a pleasant discussion that you're having with them.
Yep.
Yes.
So is there a bust in the country? If people are unable to pay for to pay for their property, but the property prices have not necessarily dropped. I'm looking at, have we seen a 50% drop in property prices across the country, across the board? And I don't see any report that suggests that.
And I'm asking, this boom that we speak of, what characterized it? What is it that actually indicated or informed us that we had a boom?
What do you think? Boom or bust?
Well, I think there was a boom, that's for sure. We had a time, if you look over the last 10 years, there was this mad rush, and the thing that was on the minds of people was to buy a piece of land, buy a home, buy an apartment here. It was clear that was. People were rushing to financial institutions to get this done. People went in and you paid a deposit, and then what you paid in rent now went towards it being your own. Right? So
Yep.
the rent essentially was paying now towards this house becoming yours. And we had a number of people who were doing this around the country, taking into consideration that the mortgage footprint in this country is actually quite low. And a lot of financial institutions are trying to put that up there. But there was a time where everybody was rushing to buy land. There was a time where everybody was dashing into the real estate business. They had an extra amount of money here. It went into real estate. And then even the organizations that had an opportunity, what were they doing? They were going into real estate. Some of the big names that we hear today in the real estate sector did not exist 15 years ago. Didn't. So it was clear that it was a sector in which there was some kind of profitability, or there was a lot of interest by the general public who would essentially come in and push and drive it. So for me, yes, there was a time where it was really, really up there. Right now, the activity is not as great. Yesterday alone, in terms of auction that came from one of the financial institutions in the country, in one housing establishment, 16 houses up for auction because people are not able to pay anymore. That's just one One, the list, and this is coming from the national housing. This is across board. It's what's happening around the country. Now, many could say that the bust has come as a result of COVID, but also before that, we had the conversations in this room where real estate were clamoring for people to even come and pay 1 month and get another 2 free. So the interest or the financial muscle or the ability then showed that it was not as strong as it was 5 years ago.
So in your opinion, there's a bust?
Yes.
But what?
I say there is no bust. I say what is happening is that there's a slight correction of pricing in the market. The market has gotten to a point where it's on a plateau. There's price correction, but it's not a bust. A bust would mean that you have a piece of land and you bought this piece of land, let's say a quarter acre, for 750,000 shillings, and now you cannot even sell it for 100,000 shillings. And do not think I've heard anyone who is saying that that's the kind of paper that they are holding.
But do we think we're heading in that direction?
I don't think so. I think it's just a correction, and then the prices will stabilize at some
I actually
point.
think we're heading in that direction.
I think we're heading to the point where people
will
will
have
not
a piece
even
of
be
land
able
and
to
they can't
sell
even
it
sell that
at
piece
all.
of land.
And not even be able
So
to
there'll be
sell
no demand. There'll be no people who want to buy land.
No, because I also think that even the very banks who are trying to sell these things will find that they can't sell them because there's nobody to buy them. We've already seen indications in this particular sector that indeed there have been attempts to recover perhaps what you lent. And it's not that you haven't tried, but there are no takers. Because what COVID has done, it has reduced the numbers, in my opinion, of people who are able to afford this kind of business. Because for you to be lent money, it means you're able to repay whatever it is you've been lent.
Yep.
Now, if your source of income dries up or it shrivels, it doesn't dry, but it shrivels,
Yep.
then of course your capacity will be reduced. This is one of the things that COVID seems to have done very, very, very effectively. So, but again, we'll be discussing this later.
Let's bring in somebody so we can continue the conversation. And this is George Wachiuri. George is the CEO of Optiven Group. It's a real estate company. They sell pieces of land around the country. They also are involved in development. George, good morning. It's good to have you.
Morning. Good to have you also.
Welcome to the Situation Room.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Now, we are having this conversation from just our observation, layman's perspective. And so that's why we'd like to have you join us and shed light on the particular matter we're talking about. In your opinion, from your experience as the CEO of Optiven Group, is there a property bubble bust? Has there been a boom at all?
Wow.
Yes, George, go ahead.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Thank you very much. My name is George Wachiuri. I lead a company called Optiven. We have been in operation for the last 20 years, and our business is to economically and socially empower and transform people. We ensure that Kenyan people have got affordable homes, and we do it in a very strategic way whereby we allow Kenyans to own it, either through installments or those who are able to buy cash. And I'm happy that for the last 20 years, we have enabled over 7,000 people to have their own homes. And that's why we are here at Optiven, and we thank God that for 20 years, we have been there. So I was listening to the discussions talking about the property bubble, and I was smiling, looking at Kenya today. Kenya is a very, very young country. I have been able to travel around the world, and I went to this particular city, the city of Istanbul. This city is about 18 kilometers in width and 173 kilometers in length. And the whole city is built up. So when I look at our Nairobi city, Nairobi is a dot. That's why I say that in Kenya, we are just joking. We are just scratching the earth on real estate. We have not even started because remember, Kenya is a young country. It's a young population. We have millions and millions of people below 35 years. So these guys require homes. These guys require land. When you talk about property bubble, I just smile because looking at the statistics, by the year 2050, more people are going to occupy this particular city of Nairobi, over 6.7 million. So we cannot really talk about the bubble. We need to rethink differently on how we can build up our real estate to be affordable. Remember, real estate is not only land. We are talking about buildings, commercial real estate. We are talking about warehousing. So for me, it's very interesting when people talk about the bubble, yet we are just starting real estate. Look at the Chinese are coming to Kenya.
So we don't even have
So you say there's no bubble at all? George?
There's no bubble at all.
Okay.
I've been there in 20 years, and the other reason why I believe there's no bubble is because look at the mortgages. According to Central Bank, we have less than 25,000 mortgages, so Kenyans are not borrowing from the bank. Very few Kenyans who borrow from the bank because, for example, you may find that out of that 25, maybe yourself, you have 2 mortgages. So I don't believe there has been a bubble at all.
So how then do you explain the rise in the number of people who are defaulting on whatever monies they had borrowed to perhaps put up or to buy a property, and the number of units of housing or buildings that are being put up for auction? There has been a clear increase. How do you explain this?
Oh, very interesting. I call this a temporary bump. I call it a temporary bump because if you look at Kenya today, there are very, very many people who buy their own houses through their own savings, through SACCOs, and very few people who borrow money to build from the bank. A good example at Optiven, 75% of our people who are building in our estate in Kitengela, Victory Gardens, Amanridge, the place of peace, these guys have not borrowed a single coin from the bank. They are from their own savings, and even this time of COVID, we have seen more uptake of green spaces. Why? Not all sectors are affected. There are sectors who are making money, and I'm sure that you're aware of that. So we cannot talk of bank repossessing. Of course, this is the normal business for the banks, but we cannot go out there and tell the population, wow, there is a bubble in Kenya. We'll be misleading those entrepreneurs who want to venture into real estate, because real estate is big, not only in Kenya, but in East Africa.
But I think we have to be realistic, George, even as we look at this. The fact of the matter is that there are people who got into an agreement to either own a home or build a home and have either not been able to complete it or are not being able to keep up with their payments. That's the reality. I don't think we can run away from that. Even as we look on the other side, where there are people who have been able to have their savings, or those who are doing well in business, I think we must look at the other side because it contributes to the bigger picture at the end of the day.
I would say that if you look at the numbers, if you look at the number of people who are having challenges in terms of pay, comparing with the magnitude of real estate, let's say Nairobi, because Nairobi is a big economy, it's a $99 billion economy. So if you look at the city of Nairobi and you compare the number of people who are losing homes, so we cannot draw a conclusion and say, hey, wait a minute, everybody is losing. Look at the upper market, look at the average market, look at Buruburu. So if you compute that population, we cannot do a conclusion, say, wait a minute, there is a glut in Kenya. That will be misleading our young people who are aspiring to have a roof under their head.
But at the same time, you're also telling people that there is no problem, that, come in, enter into this, and you'll be absolutely fine. Is that what you're saying? That the home ownership arena in the country looks so good that even if it's a young person who is up and coming in terms of entrepreneurship or has a great job, that come in and the scenery looks fantastic. There'll be no problems whatsoever. It sounds like that's what you're saying.
Of course, I do a lot of mentorship for business people. I do mentorship for young people, through George Wachiuri YouTube. And I encourage the young people, if they're looking to do business, don't look elsewhere. Think about real estate, because real estate is real. Look at the country like America. They have been in existence for 300 years, yet sometimes they have a slow uptick, but slow uptick does not mean that the road is blocked. When you encounter a bump when you are driving, that doesn't mean that that's the end of the road. Of course, there are little challenges here and there, but I encourage young people out there looking to invest in real estate. This is the best industry that you can. And I can tell you, what you are seeing today, the pandemic effect is temporary. I want to talk on this particular show another 3 years, because I am for sure. You see the way the government is doing the infrastructure. And you know that in Kenya, infrastructure opens up a business, especially for real estate. So there are opportunities. Look at the counties. The counties, every time they get call from governors, they are looking for a developer who can do affordable homes in Uasungishu, in Lamu, and this is what we need to be talking about. Can we access finances to do affordable homes?
Okay,
and
George,
that's why you see the Big Four agenda.
I can understand, and I'm very encouraged when we talk about an optimistic look at what it looks like in the country. take that vis-a-vis the high numbers of auctions we are seeing, even in the classified sections of the dailies.
But what is high? High is how many?
Or compared to zero. What are we talking
Not
about?
compared to zero. Compared to, if you talk about the
How can
mortgages,
we-
you
how can we-
said there are about 23,000 mortgages in the country. Those 23,000, it's from the ones that are active. It doesn't mean that all those 23,000 are in a year. So if you say that there are a total of 23,000 mortgages, how many of those mortgages are under distress?
Well, I think that's a piece of information we will need to find out directly from the people who give mortgages.
Because when you
However,
see
no, what I'm
auctions in
saying
the
is,
paper and you see like
I'm just
there are
saying,
10 or 15,
no,
10 or
I'm just
15 out
saying
of
now.
23,000.
No. We can't say out of 23,000. I'm saying 10 or 15 in the classifieds, right? And those announcements that are given, because I'm sure, George, you know how it is. If you look at the numbers that come out in terms of houses that are being auctioned at this time compared to a previous time, 6 months ago, 9 months ago, if the outlook is so good from where you're looking at it, how do we explain that some are not able to pay?
Interesting.
Go ahead, George. Go ahead.
Interesting. I'm smiling because you cannot draw conclusions. I'm not a scientist, but you can draw a conclusion because 2-3 pages of auctioneers advertising houses. When I was a young boy, when I was selling cars sometimes back, those auctions were still happening. And I like your co-partner who is asking, it's a 15 days on hold. So auctioneers are in business of recovering people who mismanage their estates. And that number is too small comparing with the massive development happening in our counties. I happen to come from a county. And after devolution, I have seen a lot of real estate developing homes. So we cannot draw a conclusion because we have seen 2 pages of auctioneers. This has been going on. And that's a message I want the people to hear, that if you are thinking of investing in real estate buildings, residential real estate, buying land and developing like Optiven, doing value addition, doing solar, green energy, my friend, if you are listening to me, this is a space that you can invest. We have seen foreigners, Chinese coming to invest big. There's a company coming from Turkey. They are putting about, billions of shillings in real estate. What are they seeing that we cannot see? So as Kenyan people, we need to see past 3 years, past COVID, past 10 years, because look at the way we are giving birth. Every day, the population is increasing. They are saying by the year 2030, we are going to hit about 67 to 70 million. These fellows require homes. They require land. So let's not spread the word of doom out there. Because remember, we have over 13 million young people who are looking to join the labor market, to join startup, to do business. We have to encourage them. And for me as George Wachiuri, I am in that particular business, and I know the opportunities available. And of course, when time allows,
Mr. Wachiuri, when you look at the client base that you have in your business, would you say, if you were to segregate them, are they mostly businessmen? Are they people who are in paid employment? How are they divided up?
We have about 47% they are career people, a huge percentage of people who are doing startup businesses, and about 10% diaspora. So they are mixed up. And especially for career people, they prefer saving their own money, joining the circle, and investing in piece of land, and then they build. And for us at Optiven, we don't only sell piece of land. We put all facilities. Water is there, roads are there, trees are planted, and they are able to set up their homes at their own pace. That's why when they talk about mortgages, they are so few. Below 25,000 mortgages are few. But I've seen people in our project, even now, they are building. They are building their homes. Ask them, where you get the money? These guys belong to shamas, to circles, and they are able to generate this particular money to their own homes.
We are having a conversation with George Wachiuri. He's the CEO of Optiven Group. The conversation this morning is on the real estate sector during, prior to, and post COVID-19 era. So, is there a real estate property boom and bust? George Wachiuri is saying there's absolutely nothing of that sort. Ndu, of course, says there's a bust. CT Muga is questioning, has there even been a boom at all? And I am saying there's no bust. It's just a price correction in some way, but the real estate sector is still thriving. Yes, Ndu, you've raised pertinent questions asking, looking at the paper, what you see is very many properties put on auction. It's not just houses, though. You'll even find motor vehicles put on auction. You hear people talking about their stuff that is being auctioned from their own homes and others. It could be an indicator of, stress in the economy, but is it a bigger indicator of what is happening to a particular sector? If we just look at the penetration of mortgages, so less than 25,000 mortgages, not less than 25,000, it's less than 25,000 mortgages. There are some people who have more than one mortgage. They are counted among the 25,000. That would mean there are only 25,000 homes being sold in the country if it was just focusing on mortgages. But there are very, very, very many more homes that are being constructed, being bought. There are very many pieces of land which are being sold in various parts of the country, even in the counties, which tells you that there's another source of money that is coming into this sector. It could be like what George Wachiuri is saying, SACCOs are really involved. In fact, many big SACCOs are even involved. They have an arm that is involved in investing in the real estate or direct savings. People are involved in that. The question then would be, are we seeing a strain, for example, in George Wachiuri's Optiven and all the properties that you're selling around the country and the developments that are coming up with, and you have payment plans, are you seeing a strain in the repayment or payment for the people who have already committed to take up your properties? George.
Do take two, please, kindly.
Sorry, George. I think you didn't get that. So what we're asking is, from all the properties that you're selling around the country as Optiven and the ones that you've sold, have you gotten to a point where you see someone comes and they commit and they pay the down payment or the commitment fee to take up a piece of land? And I'm sure there are some properties that you have a payment plan. Do you see an increase in the number of defaulters of those payment plans?
Okay, fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you. Of course, for us at Optiven, we offer our properties either cash or installments. And for the past couple of months, especially after March, when the first case was reported, we thought that we are going to be in trouble. And of course, we closed our offices and we now started working from home. And we told our customers, you can come to the site. But what we have discovered that the variation of default, because generally when people pick up a property, some are excited, some lose jobs. So we usually have 3% people asking for refund or defaulting. The only small variance we have seen is that we have seen 4% default, but we have also seen an increase in demand for open spaces. So we cannot really tell that the numbers have gone up, because the variation we have between 3% to 4% is because we have also seen more customers, more people discovering that they require a piece of land to build their home, because I've discovered that now they're not in the offices, they need a place they can retreat. And that's why you find that the RAD sector has peaked even this time of in a pandemic. Thank you.
If I may ask a question, Mr. Wachiuri, when you talk about properties, there are what we call high-end properties, middle-income properties, low-cost housing. Which sector of the property market would you say has been the hardest hit? Or have they all been hit?
I think the sector that has been hit by this pandemic is the high-end. High-end. Why? Many developers, especially the international developers, they rushed to do high-end properties, 20 million, 30 million, 70 million. And there were a lot of interest, especially from external sources, people, the capital venturists. So they ventured on high-end. And of course, you know that not everybody who can afford high-end. In fact, they say only 1% of Kenyan population that can be able to afford high-end. So that sector, especially commercial real estate, is affected because, remember, all of us, we are now working from home. So people with commercial real estate, they had to really persuade tenants either to extend their moratorium or maybe to reduce rent slightly. People who are renting spaces like restaurants, for example, hospitality, we had a time to negotiate in terms of rent. So I think a pandemic has hit the upper end, but not the middle, not the lower. And that's why I find that if you go to Kitengela today, you want to hire a truck, you can't find a truck. They are all busy delivering Darugo stone. They are busy delivering sand. And there's a lot of activities across counties, especially in the middle. Thank you.
How would you then describe, if you look at the, what you're calling the high end, but let's just look at the commercial real estate sector in general, the office spaces and the malls. There are people who would say that look at the malls are emptying out, and look at the office spaces are emptying out. It doesn't matter whether they are in the what is so-called upmarket areas or the CBD or the lower market areas. There has been an impact for business. Therefore, the commercial real estate side has been hit. Is that not so?
Let me say that for the shopping centers, the malls, of course, the uptake has about 60 to 70%. And the reason is that there was a time that everybody did a mall. But that does not mean that looking at 5 years to come, that the same spaces are going to be empty. You know, I happen to be a tenant at the hub, and also a tenant at the waterfront. And I remember when we started, there were very few people. But lately, I have seen companies looking for spaces. So they may be having 30% empty spaces, but I consider that as a temporary bump. Doesn't mean that 5 years to come, 3 years to come, these upcoming entrepreneurs, startups are now going to require space to provide food, to provide medicine, to open shops. So it is not all gloom and doom, especially for mall developers. But of course, at the moment, there are a few challenges, and every business has got a challenge. Not only business, even government. Sometimes we are fighting in Kenya, and then the fight ends. So what we are experiencing today because of pandemic, I would say is a temporary thing, and I can see better future even for the mall owner.
But that temporary thing, is it not gloom for the investor who's put up a mall?
And then there are no clients.
If you look at the percentage of uptake, if you are looking at 60-70% uptake, you are good. You are able to service your loans. You are able to do service charge. So I think it's not all doom, because 70% uptake, if you're in class and you get 70%, it's not that bad. But if you're talking about 20% uptake, now that one is a doom. So, but I am hoping that, and I'm happy to know some of these small owners. Of course, they are able to meet their fixed costs. It's only that their margins, they are slightly lower. That does not mean that it's all doom.
Mr. Wachiuri, you mentioned that some of the people who you've interacted with, who purchase properties, a good number do it by cash, some through SACCOs, some through banks. Now, we know that the government has borrowed extensively from our should we say the banking or the financial sector, up to something like 3.4 trillion shillings. Now, what this to a layman means that the banks will not have all that money to lend out to individuals. My thinking as a layman again. But then when you talk about cash, you bring in a new discussion. It means perhaps the sources of the cash is undocumented, it's unknown. You then bring in the discussion of money laundering, people who have acquired money through means that are not very easy to determine. Now, what am I saying? I am saying that when you look at this against the backdrop of, say, the government going into real estate development and bringing in land, which belongs to them, don't you think that all these things more or less distort the vision of the market, as we call it? Because you can't call it an even playing field. The variables are all jagged and they're all over the place.
Wow, thank you. I would say that of course, the government is projecting, out of the Big Four, they are projected to do 500,000 houses. And, of course, they have started in some areas. But 500,000 houses is a drop in the ocean, considering that there are many people going to the counties to settle there, working there. And, of course, from our experience, 20 years experience, the people who are buying land, either cash or installment, these are the people in the informal sector. Remember, according to Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, we have about 5.7 million informal businesses that are not registered. We have about 1.7 million registered companies. And these people, if you're doing your own startup, one of the vision of these business owners is to have a place of their own. And the other thing that we have seen the government do, which I think we are happy about, I belong to a private, Kenya Private Sector Alliance, and we're pushing government to pay suppliers. And for the last couple of months, we have seen government refunding VATs. We have seen His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta saying, let us pay suppliers. And when the government spends, it means that there is money in the circulation. I'm sure you saw from the central bank that there's now more money in the circulation, and now people are able to access this money. The other thing is that contributed to this purchase, especially for open spaces and land, is diaspora inflow. We had over 250 billion last year. And this year, the inflow is also increasing because remember, these diasporians, they also realize that east or west, home is best. And for us at Optiven, we are offering that particular solution to the diasporians. And I see more uptake going forward, especially for residential real estate, because every Kenyan, in their own mind, they want to have a place they call home. So what the government is providing is also a drop in the ocean. What we ask the government to do, you know, I know they have formed the Kenya Mortgage Refinancing Company, but what the government should do is to focus on infrastructure. Because if roads are done from Kitengela, from Roiro, county government does the roads, it means that developers like Optiven, we go out there and provide these homes. Why? We understand our customers. We can be able to package a product for our customers. And of course, you see the government putting a lot of money on infrastructure, and that is recommendable. Thank you.
You know, when you hear that, and that's what the question that you're asking, CT, is that really a bad thing when you have multiple sources of money that's coming into the real estate sector? Because you're saying that it may create that kind of instability when, you know, it's not coming directly, you know, from formal employment or from formal sector. It's also coming from the informal sector and all. Would that be a bad thing?
No, it's neither bad or good. I'm simply saying it distorts the picture.
What picture?
For instance, if the government is putting up a building, usually it's in land that they own.
Yep.
So the value of that land is not included in the cost of that house. It's like you've eliminated it. And you can call it low-cost housing. All right? So market forces at that point in time have already been distorted. It's actually not a level playing field because other developers have to contend with land, then they have to contend with the actual building of the property. And then they have to contend with the markup that they require. So when you have this coming into play, and why I brought in the issue of money, the central bank may say there is more money coming into the market. Those who seek to get facilities or borrow money from the bank may differ with the central bank completely. That's what the central bank thinks. Because I don't know of a scenario where the bank or the country is borrowing less or has made attempts to actually pay off whatever it is they owe to our financial institutions. Because it's in paying it off that the banks would be more liquid than they currently are. So all I'm saying is that when you look at the situation that we have and the variables that are at play within this particular market, there are many, and the picture they portray may not be what it is that we are being told. That's all I'm saying.
And I think it may just actually be stabilizing then the sector. Because if you had that one main source, if all the money was coming directly from the formal financial sector, then that would be a higher risk. If you think about some of it is coming from the formal financial sector, people going to borrow money from the bank to invest in real estate. Others are depending on diaspora remittances. So people who are in the diaspora abroad who are investing locally in the real estate. Others then are even going through their own informal businesses, savings from the returns on your business, and then you're investing in the market. That mix is good for the sector.
That mix is incomplete if we don't include the allegations that there's money coming from tenderpreneurship, as we call it.
Add that as well into
Just
the mix.
throw that into the mix.
Makes it all very good.
The good thing is, for purposes of the economy, that money goes back into the economy.
Sure.
Yes, you see? Now, all I was saying was that when I look at these things, the picture that I get is not a harmonious one. This is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
I have to look at it as it's segmented and say, okay, in this sector, this is what I see. In this segment is what I see. Because if you talk about the high end, and Mr. Wachiuri has explained it well, that many people who come in to invest in properties, come in from outside the country, want to invest in high-end property. Now, when you mention, let's not even mention 20 million. Let's talk about a house that costs 10 million shillings.
Yep.
How many people in this country can afford a house that costs 10 million? And how long do you need to save in order to pay for it? And how much do you need to earn in order to be able to save, to be able to buy that while conducting your normal affairs on a daily basis? Yes.
On average, George is still with us on the line. On average, what is the buying price for a medium-sized house? Let's say just a 2 or 3 bedroom house. Is it below the 10 million mark, or is it above the 10 million mark?
The average purchases of houses, if you set up houses ranging from 3.5 all the way to 10 million, you have a wide span of buyers. When the house is above 10 million, you may find that the buyers become lesser and lesser. And that's why you find that many developers, they are looking for houses for 5.5 million, 4.5 million, 3.5 on the outside of Nairobi. Those ones, we usually get a lot of requests for people looking for houses below 10 million.
Sure. So are these individuals or families who have this money saved up, or are they entering into agreements where they're paying a certain amount monthly? If they're paying a certain amount monthly, what are they looking at paying?
We are looking at a mix of people. There are those people I talked about, 5.7 million, small business owners. We have people in Korea. We have diaspora who are also purchasing. And most of them, we have seen they are able to pay between 30,000 all the way to 100,000. Of course, there are a class of people who can say, George, I wanted to pay you 30% deposit, but I can be depositing 200,000 a month. So we have those clusters of people, but majority, they are comfortable between 60 and 70.
So if somebody's paying 50, I mean, because we can do the math, of course, but if somebody's paying 30 to 50,000 shillings a month, I'm interested to know across board the people then who have the muscle to do this in the country at the moment, with all of these factors being taken into consideration. Do you see a higher number of people who are able to do this now than we did, say, 12 months ago, 24 months ago?
I would say that if there are sectors that they are smiling, there are sectors of open spaces, or customers looking to buy land and develop. Because when you develop your own house, you have your own taste, and you find that many Kenyans prefer building their own homes. I said earlier that if you go to these towns of Thika, Kitengela, Gong, and you're looking to hire a truck, everybody is building, especially career people. Remember, Kenya is a country of side hustle. There are many people in Korea, and they are doing other things out there. So these are the people that are now very active. They are now at home. They are able to build. So that's the cluster of people that we have seen lately, very active during the pandemic. And maybe I would like you to pay a visit in some of these towns like Kitengela, Thika, Gong, and see the activities that are happening on the ground. In fact, you change your perspective, because Kenyan people fear banks. They don't want to borrow money from the banks. They believe in their own savings, their own business. They take money from their businesses. And that's how we are. Maybe you need some lessons on the benefits of borrowing, because, of course, there are people who say, George, me, I don't want a loan. Yeah. Give me 24 months to pay.
Mr. Wachiuri, there is the factor indeed that many Kenyans, forgive me, Eric, have side hustles. But if I were to go by statistics, and this is what I managed to get, 2017 statistics by the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, they did an economic survey, and what they've termed was those who are in the lower income bracket had an average of 23,000 shillings salary. That's what they earned. In the middle income were 23,000 per month, of course, to 119,000. Now, if you look at these figures, let's even double them, all right? The tax person, if you are earning a certain amount, will take 30% of your pay. And then you have just the normal life that you need to live. How much do you need to save in order to even be able to afford a 2 million shilling house, if that is what? What I'm saying is this: side hustles notwithstanding, this may have been true before COVID, because everything, including side hustles, have reduced the earning capacity of very many Kenyans. So, because of that, the boom that your industry has enjoyed, how do you see it continuing with this reality of COVID?
Well, thank you. I think I like the Kenyan minds, because Kenyans are extremely innovative. I would say that there are industries that are really, really making money. Some of these industries is ICT industry. Right now we need, like this virtual meeting. We have seen industries like health, and we have seen other industries that are favored by this pandemic. And that's why we say that entrepreneurs, when you give them a lemon, they make a lemonade. And we have seen a lot of these entrepreneurs mutating and thinking differently and doing things very differently. So that does not mean that there are other sectors that are not affected. So I would say it's like 50-50. So pandemic comes with its own advantages and also disadvantages. So we should not generalize to say that the entire economy is in shambles because of the pandemic, because we have seen people mutating from one level to the next. And going forward, especially for open spaces, we might see more uptake because there's a panic people know that you can be told to work from home. And that's why you find that people like Optiven, we have seen a higher uptake, especially for people who do their own homes. I think that's my take.
Okay. Eric, I know you had a question, but George, there have also been, unfortunately, very many cases where people have put their money into projects and it has not been forthcoming. On short of calling them fraudulent schemes or things like that. So you have a lot of people then who are hesitant then when it comes to putting any hard-earned money that they have been able to put aside into projects like this or any that they're not sure of when it comes to owning a home. How are we going to get away from this heavy image that is resting on the minds of people when they say, okay, I put this money together, how can I be sure that if I put it into any kind of real estate, that I'll be sure I'll get returns on it?
Okay, fantastic. I happen to do a lot of, leadership talks, and I have a following that I advise that every time you want to put money in real estate, don't put money because you have seen Optiven on media. Check it out. Do your due diligence, because remember, we have about 10,000 companies dealing with the properties in Kenya. So out of these particular companies, I always tell the potential buyers that find out who are the directors. Is the company registered? Do they have an office? So that by the time you are going to enter into an agreement, you are sure that the agreement is watertight. Get a lawyer to do a good agreement. But we have seen that most of the Kenyan people, they trust quickly, including myself. You may find that you're even paying money without necessarily having an agreement. So if something happens, you have nothing to fall over. However, we are happy that currently we have seen the government coming in and preventing these fraudulent transactions by ensuring that if you are doing a search, you can do it online. And I'm happy that we are now able to do searches online through e-citizen. You only need to do a Q-reader on a title, and you are able to read, to see the history of your property. And I'm happy that out of the 53 registries, the government is to ensure that all these registries are automated. This way, we reduce the number of fraudsters that pick people's money. They are not able to produce titles, and I think that's a good step towards this development of real estate in Kenya.
Even the fraud goes beyond just the piece of land and the agreement that you've entered into. There are those that complain that you went ahead, did due diligence, and you found that this company is legit. Mm-hmm. You started your payments towards the purchase of a house. At some point, then the company itself goes under because of poor management. Others are complaining about being enticed to invest in buying a piece of land somewhere, and you're told that, we're going to invest this, some greenhouses into farming, and then you will get some returns out of it. And then some months down the road, that also becomes a cropper. What would you advise people on how to avoid such?
I think my word is that, of course, we are entering into business. Business is a risk. Even what we are doing at Optiven is a risk. And they say in every return, there is a risk. So it doesn't mean that because you lost a property 2 years ago, 3 years ago, you will never invest. It's like buying a car. You buy a new car and go and get an accident. Doesn't mean that once you're out of the hospital, you would buy a car. But my caution is that it's very, very important to do the due diligence. But that does not mean that at one point or another, you won't be. Personally, I lost 5 million on another transaction. So, but of course, it's good to be cautious. But we must not really fear that you never do investment because maybe you lost 500,000, you lost 200, because that is part and parcel of life. Because we are living in a society whereby, the word authenticity, it doesn't exist, and if it does, with very few people. But I'm happy that what the government is doing is going to prevent the cases of this kind of thing.
From your very optimistic view of what the market looks like now, maybe paint a picture of what you think is going to happen in the future. When it comes to owning homes for Kenyans or even owning pieces of commercial property across the country. And I think a lot of the focus is on the bigger cities and towns in Kenya. What would be your forecast if we're going to look 5 years down the line? Do you see more Kenyans owning homes and commercial properties?
Looking at 5 years to come, given that Kenya, especially the city of Nairobi, is the hub, it's a gateway to Africa. And looking at the devolution, especially the counties, I would like that the people who are thinking about real estate, I think the place to invest is in the county headquarters, and also those who are migrating to the city of Nairobi. I think there is a lot of hope, especially when we see development of infrastructure, the highway coming up and other open roads. The other day I went to my own county in Nyeri. They are opening up even weather roads. And what happens that where I come from when I was growing up, there were no beautiful houses. But I went there the other day. I think our house is the oldest because people are now able to travel from Nyeri all the way 18 kilometers to Kieni, and they are able to set up their homes. So I see more homes development because Kenyan people, the way we were born to own. However, I'm aware that if you look at the city of Nairobi, 80% of the people in Nairobi, they are renting. And Nairobi is owned by 20%. But there is that dream of every Kenyan person to have a home. And I'm happy that with our young population, there is better future. Look at the counties. Look at the cities that are upcoming.
Yeah.
Look at the upcoming towns. And I can tell you that we can be able to house our people. Remember, 67% of our population in the city of Nairobi, they are in the informal sector. And these people, they have a dream to have their own compound, their own home. So we foresee more uptick going forward.
Thank you very much, George Wachiuri, for speaking to us this morning. George is the CEO of Optiven Group. It's a real estate company that has been in operation for how long again, George?
We have been operating for the last 20 years to ensure that we house our Kenyan people.
Asante sana. Thank you very much for speaking to us today, and we wish you a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.